Hey everybody, Rob from Karma Comment Chameleon. Today, we're looking at the Regular Revenge subreddit. Our story, out with a bang. Let's jump right in. Hit that subscribe button for more daily Reddit stories and consider becoming a channel member to get access to exclusive channel member only content. I was a barista who worked for a prolific bookstore that shall remain nameless, though you can probably guess which one. I'm sorry this is such a long post, but there was so much that happened within 2 years of total and complete hell, and it's very difficult to summarize it all in just a few short paragraphs, but the payout was so worth it. I was hired on to the store's cafe team as a transfer from another store with 3 years experience when I moved across the country. The coworkers were pretty cool at first, but when I was promoted to the cafe lead position, it seemed to me that I was stepping on some of my coworkers' toes, including my cafe managers. The bookstore manager was impressed with my work ethic, and I'd been with the company for long enough to be promoted for the position. But the cafe manager had other plans for the position that was given to me. So instead of just dealing with the cards he'd been dealt, he instead went around to the other employees and asked them to report back to him or another manager if there was ever anything I did wrong. And as a new lead in a store with a higher than average traffic intake, there were always little mistakes being made. It was nothing I could avoid, but they kept records of every little thing I forgot to do. My cafe manager would sit me down and tell me I wasn't performing to standards. He would critique me for every little thing, call me insubordinate for simple mistakes, and blow things out of proportion. My coworkers offered me little help, and most of them went out of their way to make my shifts even more difficult. An example of how terribly they treated me would be highlighted when my father had to be taken into emergency care. I called out of my shift so that I could take him to the hospital, as I was the only one who could. My store manager wasn't thrilled, but she said she would take care of it. Gee, thanks for the sympathy. I was at the hospital for most of the day with my father and my boyfriend until my mother showed up. We were in the ER almost all day waiting for answers, but my father seemed like he was going to be fine. So my boyfriend, who happened to work at the same bookstore as me, except as a bookseller instead of a barista, said he wouldn't call out from work and would go in for his shift. I drove him to the store, and when we got there, he told me that I should come in for a minute so that I could grab something to drink or eat, since we hadn't had anything to eat all day. We walked up to the cafe, and as I was ordering a sandwich and a coffee from my coworker, she asked how my day was. I told her it wasn't great, but left it at that. I didn't want to talk about my family health problems with my coworkers. Then my boyfriend ordered, and the same coworker asked him, "How was the park?" We figured out later that she assumed we had skipped work to go to a local theme park. She took her anger and rose hell with my store manager after I left to go back to the hospital. She felt that it was disrespectful that I would come in after calling out of my shift, and my store manager agreed with her before hearing my side. I told my store manager that I literally hadn't eaten a damn thing all day, and that's the only reason I came in, aside from dropping off my boyfriend for his shift. She said that it wasn't smart, and you owe her and your coworkers an apology. I told my store manager, well, they better not hold their breath, because I did nothing wrong, and I refuse to apologize. If an apology is owed, it's from her and you. She was disappointed I felt that way, but didn't press the matter further. This was when I started to play dirty. My cafe manager liked to get me in trouble with the store manager for things he himself would do, so I started keeping a journal as per my store manager's request. A food order came one day when I was the closing lead. My cafe manager and another lead were in charge of putting the order away. I found out that they didn't finish putting the order away. Most of the boxes were left out of the walk-in refrigerator, including the milks. I told my store manager, and she was on my side about it for once. But when I worked with my cafe manager next, he had some BS excuse as to why he, nor the other lead, could finish putting the order away. Another day, he got angry with me because there was a company-wide memo that didn't make it to our cafe communication log. I told him I tried printing out the memo, but none of the printers were working, and the managers wouldn't let me use the manager computer that day, and how the memo literally didn't even concern our store. It was about a couple stores testing out a new cafe food item, not even in our district. He was still mad at me, calling my performance unacceptable. Then he raises the same anger with another lead, asking why the memo didn't make it to the log. She told him the exact same reason I had for not getting it done, and he tells her, okay, that's fine. I got super pissed and decided to confront him this time. I told him it was BS that for me, not getting the same tasks done as another lead was unacceptable, but for her it's fine. He asked why I was getting upset, and I said that it felt like no matter what I did around the cafe, it was wrong. And he said, look, if it were up to me, I wouldn't have 3 cafe leads, I'd only have 1, and essentially went on to say how my position there was worthless. I wrote this exchange down in my journal and waited for my store manager to come back from her month-long vacation. When she finally did come back, she called me into her office to raise some concerns about my performance in the store. I told her that all that information was biased because of my cafe manager, and I told her I had written down numerous exchanges between my cafe manager and myself, along with other employees. And my store manager says, I don't care. You should have told me about these things when they happened. I don't want to hear about it now. I was stunned. I clarified, wait, so you don't want to hear about anything he said to me in the past month because I didn't report it instantly to you since you were on vacation? She said she had had enough of the drama and that I was being put on an improvement plan. An improvement plan was the store's way of saying, look, you're not performing to standards and we're going to do what we can to fix it. But if we don't like where you're at when the improvement plan is done, we're firing you. I already knew my time at the store was done. I was having anxiety attacks in the parking lot before every shift. I couldn't take it anymore, so I planned out my revenge. At this point in time, it was November, slowly coming up to Thanksgiving and the holiday season. I had previously asked for, and been approved for, time off so that I could spend it with family that was coming in from out of town. 1 week before my week off with the family is when I put in my 2 weeks notice, the same time as another coworker in the cafe who I convinced to quit alongside me, and I put in an email to corporate HR just to make matters for the store manager and cafe manager worse. My district manager came into the store to talk to me 2 days before my last day, and I told him everything. I told him why I was leaving, I showed him the journals I kept, and I told him how I felt bullied and how everyone in the store who knew me, barring my boyfriend since that looked biased, could see how I was being treated by the cafe manager and the store manager and how it wasn't right. My district manager said he'd look into it. On my last day, the district manager came back to the store and talked to me again. He said that there was no way to prove that the cafe manager or store manager did anything wrong, despite everything that I'd shown him and told him. He was basically saying, we're sorry it didn't work out for you, but at least you're leaving so everything worked out. That's when I decided to play the ace in my sleeve. If you've made it this far, thank you. I promise you this is worth it. I told my district manager that I had one other bit of information to share with him about my cafe manager. I told him how my coworker, who put in her notice the same day I did, only did so because of advances made on her by the cafe manager. I told him how my cafe manager liked to take out the female baristas to the movies, take them to dinners, and in general be an overall creep. One of the cafe leads told me how she lived in the same apartment complex as the cafe manager and how he had come over to her place to do her laundry and rub her feet. He made multiple advances toward many of the female staff, and none of them ever felt comfortable enough coming forward with the information. I continued talking to the district manager, saying that the only reason that I was telling him all this information now was because I finally convinced one of the victims to come forward and tell her experience, as well as quit the store. He seemed alarmed by the information and thanked me for it. I left the store that day with a smirk on my face, wishing my cafe manager and store manager the best of luck. My boyfriend still worked at the store after I left and fed me all the details. The cafe was a show after I left. A lot of what I did for the cafe became evident when nothing was getting done. The new hires weren't getting trained effectively enough. On Black Friday, the busiest day of the year for our store, the cafe manager threw one of the new hires onto the espresso bar without any formal training. None of the drinks were coming out right, and she left the store during her lunch break and never came back. The chaos continued all weekend, and the cafe manager and store manager were both increasingly stressed out. And then, my boyfriend came home with some amazing news. The cafe manager was fired after the sexual harassment allegations proved true, and he was escorted from the store in the middle of his shift with no warning. The cafe leads that were still there struggled the entire holiday season without a manager, and one of the leads, who was gunning for a manager position, got pissed off when the company brought in a cafe manager from another district rather than promoting her to the position, so she left. The store manager has been suffering from constant visits from the district manager, making her more and more miserable and irritable. Rumor has it that the company and the district manager issued her an improvement plan. Laugh out loud. And the last I heard, the old cafe manager had to move out of his apartment that he could no longer afford and now works at some overstock store in receiving. As for myself, I found work not too much longer after I quit, at a very chill job for a year so that I could do minimal work and still get a boss paycheck for 1 year. Now I'm working for a large coffee chain, similar to the job I had at the bookstore, only with better coworkers, and I'm back in college to work a better paying job when all's said and done. Whenever I drive by that bookstore though, I still give it the finger with the biggest smile on my face. I think there's a lot of us that would drive by one of our old workplaces and flip it the bird every time we go by. I know I do for a couple of places, and it gives me this weird sense of satisfaction when I do it, even though the people that work in those places now are probably not the ones that were there when I was. I want to thank OP for posting this story to the Regular Revenge subreddit. You can visit OP at the links in the description below. Please do that and give them an upvote. Once again, this is Rob from Karma Comic Chameleon saying thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please hit that subscribe button, drop a like, and share it with your friends, and we'll see you in the next one.